Hi, April. Welcome back to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast.
Thank you so much, Biz. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm really excited to have you back. I think this is your third time on the podcast. I know it
That,
was the Woman Warriors podcast before, but yeah.
yeah, that sounds about right. I feel
Yeah.
honored to be on so many times. Thank you.
Well, it's funny because I think that at the beginning of our conversations, I was really just learning about high sensitivity. And I remember talking to you in our first round and being like, wow, like this is me. And it just opened so many doors for me. So it's been such a gift to be able to continue to have our long distance relationship and get to follow
Yeah,
you and what you've been doing. But for people who may not have heard our previous conversations or don't follow you on social media and stuff, could you share a little bit about yourself?
absolutely. Yes, so I am a therapist, an author, a podcast host. I'm located in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I specialize in supporting HSPs in everything that I do. And my goal is really to help HSPs understand that guilt, that overwhelm that we often feel on a daily basis is not permanent. We can actually make shifts in our lives and how we take care of ourselves to uncover the positive aspects of being a sensitive person. You know, the intuition, the empathy, the creativity, and the perception, all of it is hiding underneath of that. So that really motivates me and drives all the work that I do with HSPs.
Mm, yeah, because I feel like the guilt can just be the driving force of all we do if that's not sort of taken care of and allowed to be put aside or at least healed. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. I mean, we're such empathetic people, which is lovely, but we often then feel guilty or selfish for even considering our own needs, let alone, you know, diving into them.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's amazing how often for me that the guilt or the part of me that just wants everybody else to be happy still
Yeah.
jumps in and can take over and it's a continuing journey, but
Mhm.
maybe share a little bit about like when did you know you were highly sensitive?
Yeah, I officially knew when I was in graduate school becoming a
Mm.
therapist. So not it's been a little over a decade now. So not that long.
Hmm.
But I was out to lunch with a classmate and they had asked me if I had heard of Dr. Aaron's work, Dr. Elaine Aaron's work around sensitivity and her book, The Highly Sensitive Person, and I had not. You know, as you know, we don't often learn about that in school.
Yeah.
And even a lot of folks in therapist circles haven't been introduced to the research. So I was like, wait, this is me. And it really, I say, like, it was that missing puzzle piece, right? Everything started to click together. And then I started looking back. 'Cause I was thinking about this. I don't think I was, I've heard a lot of HSP say, that I was called too sensitive. I don't remember that particular phrasing, but I do remember being more impacted by sound and really savoring those meaningful moments, like around the holidays or with my grandparents. And I was always the first one to notice the little details. And being 2 years old and not wanting to go to preschool because my socks weren't right.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yes. And just being a more emotional person in general. So I definitely could see the signs of sensitivity, excuse me, throughout, but not knowing that, oh, this is a trait with these, collection of characteristics that I was born with. I had no idea until I was in my, I guess, early 30s, which I
Mm.
honestly I'm grateful for because I've come across folks who haven't heard about it until their 50s, 60s, 70s even.
Yeah,
Right, you
that's me.
included.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah.
Um, and still figuring it out, honestly.
Hmm. Well, it's funny, I think, because for me, Elaine Aron's work really wasn't even a thing until much late in my lifetime. And um, I can very much relate to you, like sort of looking back on like, I'm not sure I was told I was too sensitive, but I always felt like sort of I was the problem, right? That
Yes.
my socks didn't feel right, or, that wool sweater, there was no way I could tolerate wearing something scratchy on my skin, or, but sound too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being highly attuned to sounds. Um, I was thinking too, like, well, and like having like one best friend, like that being
Yes.
really important,
Mhm.
that there was this one person I knew I could connect with, throughout my life in and out. But how do you see, knowing now what you
Mhm.
know about your sensitivity, how has it impacted your life as you've come through and learned more about it, but also when you were a kid, how was that
Mhm.
affecting you?
I think the biggest piece is something you just named, which is knowing I don't have to change myself for so
Mm,
many years. So it's interesting. My family's kind of split. Some of the folks are really talkative and social and kind of over the top, and the others are really quiet and more reserved. But I remember thinking, like, I've got to change. I have to be more outgoing and go with the flow and, not be so particular. That inner dialogue has really softened quite a bit.
mm,
It's a
mhm.
lot easier to say, oh, this is what I need. And it's okay if you need something different. But I need to slow down. I need more introspection time. I need notice if someone else is going to be joining us for an event. When I was expecting to have some one on one meaningful time together.
Yeah.
Those are things that I need a little bit of space to process and get ready for.
Mm.
There's just more of an acceptance of who I am naturally instead of trying to constantly fit myself into a box that someone else expects me to be. It's like, no, I'm different and that's okay. And actually, this has taken a long time to get to, but I bring a lot to the table as a sensitive person.
Yeah.
Even just saying that, I'm like, oh, I'm still getting used to that. Um, but that's the journey I'm on. It's just letting myself be who I am.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that sort of acknowledgement, or even sort of becoming more aligned with that, like, yeah, I bring stuff too, right? Really important
Yeah.
things to relationships, conversation, but the world in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and I feel like,
exactly.
yeah. And I feel like the more we can, as sensitive people, the more of our energies that are allowed to shine, like I do feel like that just, I don't know, just ripples outward and is really important, especially kind of now in the world where everything kind of feels like it's on fire.
Yes, exactly. We really need sensitive folks who are seeing kind of what's possible, seeing the big picture, that are,
Mhm.
offering that emotional support, that empathy, seeing what we need to shift to make things better. I mean, we bring so much, and I think we often, it's unfortunate that the difficult parts of sensitivity are what's highlighted the most, or what we equate with sensitivity.
Mm,
Whether, right, that kind of being overly emotional, excuse me, or kind of prickly or, too slow to react. But really, if we step back and look at the big picture, it's like, well, we're the ones that are very justice minded. We're the emotional caretakers. We're really the ones that notice the little details before anyone else does, or can see a problem before it happens and prevent it. And we don't
mhm.
really get noticed for all of those contributions that are kind of subtle and happen behind the scenes. It's more just like, oh, you're too emotional, you're too slow, you're too reactive. We get labeled with that instead of
Yeah.
looking at what we really bring.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm in a few, including yours, a few different groups for highly sensitive people. And I think sometimes what uh I come away with in some of the groups is like this deep sadness for how often the traits are viewed as such a burden, such a
Yes.
burden. And I'm grateful that that has shifted for me in my life, but I would love for that to ripple outward too, to just be
Yeah.
able to love those parts of you that are so empathetic, that do sort of take on emotional baggage from other people, but with compassion, right? That we're able
Yeah.
to hold so much. But yes, I know that sometimes that can be hard too.
Hmm. Yeah, it's sad. I see that in these online communities as well, that the being more sensitive is often perceived as a burden. That's the only experience a lot of people have ever known. And
Mhm.
a lot of times it's because we're not setting down all that we're absorbing and picking up from others. There's not that sense of relief or recovery because we need that counterbalance. It absolutely step in and take care of people and notice and feel, but then we need space to come back home to ourselves
Yes.
to sort through everything we've picked up because we're not just picking up the things we're aware of, it's also things that we're unconscious of. The little details, the body language, the sensory information. It's just so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so much, as you said, sort of the unconscious that we're then taking away and maybe processing later, but maybe it's just being held, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Stored in our bodies and our nervous system
Yeah.
and not, we don't have a chance to release it. And I think when we're in that state of its sensitivity is a burden, it's just we're completely overstimulated, overwhelmed for too long.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
not that permission to do things differently, right? To slow down, to take care of yourself. And we get stuck in those expectations.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, I was in a group with a meditation group this morning, and one of the themes that was coming up was like these sort of expectations of the world we live in and how we're supposed to live, or how we're supposed to do it, life in general. And I feel like to be able to acknowledge, like, well, I might have to do things differently, especially in my work, our work.
Definitely.
Um, um, but just in life too, right? I might just have
Hmm.
to say no to some things, or go
Yeah.
home early, or show up later, or whatever it is. But giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves.
That's
Yeah.
it. We had talked about on when you were on my podcast about going to concerts. And I remember you
Mm.
said, like, I give myself time to settle in, to observe, and then I leave early if I need to. Like,
Yes.
yeah, we can still show up, but can we do it on our own terms where you might
Mm.
modify that process a little? Um,
Mm.
and yeah, it's okay to say no sometimes. I think we get into these places of always it's always an automatic yes
Yeah.
because it's uncomfortable to say no. We're so empathetic. We want people to feel welcome and taken care of. And we
Yeah.
think that, that excludes saying no, but oftentimes people want to hear how we're really doing. I don't
Yeah.
think most people don't want you to say yes if it's a burden. Maybe be a little more selective with your yes. So when you're showing up, it's a quality experience. You're present, you're excited to be there, and then you get to
Mm.
connect instead of reserving your energy the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little change goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about often other people want you to be there because you want to be there, or you're
Yes.
saying yes because that's what you need. Yeah. Or what we
Right.
need. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that for a long time, I have, I can really sense like there's this part of me that just wanted to say yes all the time, that wanted to, um, yeah, not make waves, not cause conflict. And it causes so much disruption inside me that
Hmm.
I'm learning, like, oh, no, 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 it's better if I'm showing up when I really want to. Better for me,
Yes.
better for the relationships, better for
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it. It's better for everyone. Usually what's good for HSPs is good for everyone.
There you go.
Not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and showing up when it feels right and we don't get into that cycle of feeling resentful, which is so
Right.
dangerous in relationships. Yeah.
So dangerous.
Yeah.
Oh, that can just become such a toxic mess when there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
resentment and expectations that aren't being met. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, for you, obviously, I mean, because you shared your work, that you are very focused on helping other highly sensitive people really live their best life, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, um, but what have you had to implement in order to, I don't know, make your work sustainable for you and yeah, and your
Yeah.
life?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely being really selective about what I commit to and creating a lot of space. So, as a therapist, I have space between every appointment that I have. I have, well, I guess it's kind of 2 days off where I have no appointments, one for administrative work, one for self care, kind of a catch all day. And, not
Mm,
everyone has that flexibility, but I think it's so essential to have one day that's unstructured, unscheduled, and for me, I love to be able to wake up and just kind of linger on my yoga mat or, write in
mm,
my journal or just have a cup of tea or whatever it is. But having that space just to be is so important, no matter what your life looks like. If you have kids or not, just having a little bit of space that you can catch up with yourself is so essential. And that looks, differently for a lot of different people. And then having those, so I think of that as the kind of clearing out time,
mm.
sifting through all my thoughts and emotions and thinking about what I've been through that week. But then there's the needing to fill back up again. What's important to me, what's meaningful to me, getting onto my yoga mat, reading, cooking, things like that. Whatever it is for you, it's so unique. And I always remind people that every HSP is different. Could
Yeah.
be playing video games, it could be going on, doing a marathon, whatever that looks like, depending on your flavor of sensitivity and the other aspects of your personality. But what's meaningful to you, right? And make sure that you prioritize that every single week. And ideally having space at least once a week, but even better every single day to quiet your mind. I mean, I just think about, I feel like we might have talked about this on another episode, or something about like time traveling, where I would like to pretend I'm going back in time, or there's no cell phones, there's no,
Mm,
there's not screens everywhere, because we used to have
yeah.
all these built-in moments for processing
Yeah.
in the grocery store line, at the doctor's office, in the car, even just sitting on the couch at the end of the day. And those have all been taken away. So can we put those back in,
Mm,
where we just have time to think and be with ourselves? I think those are two pieces, I'm just kind of generally speaking, that are critical: space and meaning, if I could
yeah.
really summarize it. And lots of different things fit into those categories for me, but those are two that I really prioritize. And then just remind myself why those are essential for me as a sensitive person. As a deep processor, a deep feeler, those are the lifeline for me.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's such a great point about missing those natural moments
Yeah.
before cell phones and streaming. And like there was just space where we didn't have headphones in or
Yeah.
weren't listening or paying attention to something else.
Yeah, space just to be where we're untethered. I just think
Yeah.
about everything we do now. We're listening to a podcast, we're listening to music, we have maybe two screens on sometimes, your big screen, your little screen. There's screens everywhere. And it's just as an HSP who's noticed so many subtle details, and then those subtle details will evoke emotions and memories, it's a lot happening internally. No wonder
Yeah.
people are chronically overstimulated and feel like this trait is a burden. So
Yeah.
you're holding a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to remind myself recently that like I can only tolerate a certain amount of news each day.
Yes.
Yeah, and it needs to be in print. I mean, I used to actually get the newspaper so I could turn the page if I didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
like looking at
Oh,
whatever it
that's
was.
good.
But I don't anymore. Now it's online, but also giving my self permission to limit how much time I spend reading the news.
Yeah.
And I don't get alerts on my phone or anything like that because that can just send me into sensory overload so quickly.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm,
Yes, we have to have those internal boundaries with ourselves.
hmm.
Thinking about what am I exposing myself to, and with the news, we get to choose how we consume it. I think it's really important for us to stay informed because,
Yes.
you want to know what's happening so you're not surprised. and you want to be
Hmm.
able to digest what's going on and then be able to prepare for whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and what's going on in the world. But thinking about instead of watching the TV or watching social media, and there's a lot of graphic images now,
Hmm.
which can be really disturbing to see. And then there's a lot of
Yes.
sensationalism as well. People want, and that's how social media works. It's supposed to like outrage you and evoke you. So can you consume that in a different format, like print, where you get to decide how
Hmm.
much and you can take breaks and you don't have those images that get stuck in your
Yeah.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a choice you can make. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a key, right? Like we do have
Mm-hmm.
choices. Like
Yes.
we can get so hyper focused on just kind of doing it whatever the same way, but there are choices that we can make to support ourselves, to give ourselves that space. Yeah, a few years ago I decided, when I walk for exercise, I don't have headphones in. I
Yeah.
just walk, right? I
Yeah.
just pay attention. And sometimes my mind is just like rehashing things, but
Mm-hmm.
it's when something does come into my awareness, like a
Yeah.
beautiful tree that's changing color right now, I can stop and be like, ah, there it is. Like
Yes.
I have the capacity to see it and feel it. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's important to remember that we do have choice. I think we forget that. We've often been put on other people's timelines or expectations, especially as kids, like, you are often told to do things differently, go at a different pace, be less reactive, be less of a feeler or
Hmm.
thinker. But yeah, we have choice in every single thing that we do, and I know it often doesn't feel like that. So can we start with those smaller choices that feel more accessible and that don't involve anybody else, so we can get comfortable with it, like not wearing earplugs when you're going to off on your evening walk. I've started to do that too. It's like, can I just be in the moment? Is there's enough happening inside of my mind?
Right.
I don't need to add anything else. And just that, that bilateral movement, that back and forth as you walk, it's such a great support as you're processing whatever you went through that day or that week. Let your
Hmm.
mind do its work. It really needs to. Otherwise, you'll be doing it on the pillow before you go to bed.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
true. And maybe
Yeah.
not sleeping as well as you would like to.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, looking at what small choices do you have available?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, love that. So, what is your favorite thing about being highly sensitive?
Oh, oh, this is a great question. What's my favorite thing? I like there's so many things. Um, I don't know. I actually do. This might be surprising to some people, but I love that they're more and more empathetic than other people, or that we have those more active mirror neurons that gives us
Mhm.
access to a lot more empathy because it really helps me understand and connect with people. And of course, there's a shadow side to that. It can also get a little heavy sometimes, but I love being able to understand people, to feel into their emotions with them. It really feels meaningful to me. And just I don't know, to get access to people's inner worlds in a way that other people don't, this feels really special.
Mm.
I don't know, I really love that. And then the deep feeling part, just how it shows up. I just think about like when I do my yoga practice or my meditation practice, there is this really rich inner world that I have access to that I don't see everyone else being able to step into. And not just that, that could also expand out into when I get body work done. It becomes a spiritual experience for me on the table,
Yeah.
and it's really profound. And just having all that inner depth is just incredible. And yeah, every once in a while I think, would I change the fact that I'm sensitive? I was like, no way. I would
Yeah.
not. It would be so much. I would lose so much.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be you.
Exactly. I wouldn't be me. Right. And it's, adds so much beauty and meaning and depth to my life that, yeah, it's pretty incredible. So yeah, I would say kind of go hand in hand. I think the empathy and the emotional depth that we get to
Mm.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would imagine um, that your clients really feel that from you.
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure your friends do too, but
Sure.
in your work, I am sure that, yeah, they really feel that
Mm.
about you. Yeah. That you're
Thank
right there
you.
with them. And
Yeah, it makes it, I mean, it's such a gift to be a therapist with more empathy, right? Really just being able to support your clients so deeply and wholeheartedly. Yeah, it's pretty special.
yeah, well, it just feels so genuine and true, right? I mean, it's really
Hmm.
coming from your heart.
Yeah, I know I really care about them a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I can
Yeah.
feel that. I feel that deeply. So, how do people find you if either they just want to know more about you, but I know you have great resources, you have
Hmm.
books and all kinds of stuff to support highly sensitive people. How do they find you?
Yeah, you can find all of the resources, the podcast, the my workbook. I have free workshops, blog, everything is at sensitivestrengths.com.
Love that. Love that. Sensitive strengths. That's us, right?
Yep, that's us.
Strong and sensitive. Well, April, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I will share all the links in the show notes, but I just want to just say thank you for once again coming on and spending time with us.
Yes, thank you so much, Biz. This is always a joy. Thank you for having me.
Mm.